So to start off, we have a quick history lesson. So as we mentioned, we're occupational therapists, and our roots in OT actually started back during World War I. And back then we were called reconstruction aides, and reconstruction aides were back then women, and our role was to work with veterans coming back from serving in World War I who had various mental health disabilities and engaging them in purposeful activities, so woodworking, sewing, board games, card games, that sort of thing. And as we can see, things really haven't changed all that much some odd years later. So this is a picture of Erik back when he was an OT deployed to Afghanistan. And you can see the soldiers here were coming off the battlefield, and he'll talk about this a little more later, and using games to unwind at the end of the day and kind of take themselves back to a place of normalcy and relaxation. So what we do as occupational therapists is essentially our role is to enhance function and independence in all areas of life, to help the people that we work with overcome barriers, whether it's after an injury or if they have a lifelong disability or permanent or temporary disability. So whether that's, dressing yourself, bathing yourself, going to the bathroom, grocery shopping, cooking, all of these things that we kind of do day to day that we might take for granted. And what we're seeing as OTs is that more and more times we'll sit down with a patient and we'll say, okay, what are your goals? And they might say, I can't hold my baby, I can't bring a fork to my mouth. But a lot of times they're saying, I can't game. And that's really powerful to have a patient tell you that, I'm gonna be real, it's just as important to me to be able to hold a game controller as it is to hold a wad of tissue paper and wipe my own behind after the bathroom. So what we're going to talk about during this presentation is how when games are accessible enough, we as therapists are able to bring them into the therapy and treatment clinics and use them to motivate our patients and have them find joy in gaming, first off, while they're recovering and getting better, and then also ultimately have them be able to go home after recovery and continue to play these games. So as we all know, since we're sitting here, games matter and games are important. So here we have a video. What it looks like is just, sorry, that's kind of loud. Just two guys playing Wii together. They're kind of mashing and punching two Wii controllers, at least that's what it might look to a lot of people in the audience. To us as therapists, I see a lot of things. I see working on upper extremity strength, range of motion, core strength. Biggest thing, social participation. They're playing together, they're having fun together, they're enjoying themselves while they're also working on all of these physical and cognitive tasks as well. So this is Bud. Me and Erik met Bud this past summer, and he was in a motorcycle accident and he injured his leg and his right arm pretty badly, and he really didn't want to put pressure on that right leg of his. He was having a lot of difficulty and in a lot of pain just standing, and when he couldn't stand, the tasks he had trouble with were standing up to pull his pants over his legs, kind of just everyday things like that. And the first time that we treated Bud, we had him in standing at a table and we gave him a puzzle. And we said, we're gonna work on standing, we're gonna place these puzzle pieces around, and we're gonna have you kind of shift your weight back and forth, practice putting weight on that leg, and we're gonna practice standing. He stood for maybe 2 minutes, and then he immediately sat back down and said, nope. Too much pain, I'm done with this. The next time we treated Bud, we brought out the Xbox and the Xbox adaptive controller, and obviously his face immediately lit up. He said, I love games, I'm a lifelong gamer, this is super cool. And we're like, yeah, we know. So we had Bud play a game using the Xbox adaptive controller, and this was only, I think, maybe a day later. He stood for 17 minutes. That's basically like saying you improved almost times 10 in your physical capacity and getting better just because he was so engaged in gameplay and he was enjoying himself while he was getting better and while he was working on that standing tolerance. The feedback that we hear most often as therapists is that people don't want to play therapy games. They don't want to play games that are made to be super simplistic or not mainstream. They want to play what their friends are playing. They want to play what they're used to. All the big titles out there, they want those games to be obviously just as accessible to them as other games. And honestly, my worst fear as a therapist is having to sit down with a client for the first time and say to them, yeah, you can't play that. You're not ready for that yet. I'm sorry, that game is too hard for you. It's a first-person shooter, and you could only do mouth input. We can't do that. I'm sorry. That's a terrible, terrible feeling to tell someone you can't play that, or we have to work our way up there. So this video that I have on the left here is from one of our game nights at Harborview Medical Center. And I really, really love these game nights for a lot of reasons. Obviously, first and foremost, that we're getting to help gamers get back in the game, but also it's so cool to have a room full of OTs. We have Bryce there from Microsoft Hardware, we have John there from Forza, and to be learning, not only learning, but playing with and all learning together as we're sitting next to these gamers with disabilities, and maybe seeing them struggle through games, but learning as they do so and giving us immediate and direct feedback. So this video that I have here, this woman, we actually just took the 2 switches that she was already using for her wheelchair, and we mapped them to essentially left stick left and left stick right. So she's using them, I think the video stopped playing, but she was using those 2 to kind of steer the car left and right while playing Forza, and then she had another big switch button that she was using to accelerate. And that was her first time playing again after getting injured. And due to the driving assists in Forza, she was able to play again. We set it on very easy. We put on a lot of assists for her. But like Bryce mentioned before, she was still able to play and she was able to enjoy it. Maybe she wasn't mastering it or she wasn't playing competitively at that point in time, but she could still enjoy it. And this video that we have here, you met him earlier, this is Jesse. We had him in the Inclusive Tech Lab, and he was playing Rocket League, as Bryce was talking about earlier, using just the quad stick. And kind of how that looked like when we had him set up is, first we had to go through the physical setup, so mounting the quad stick, setting it up to the adaptive controller. But then what it looked like was first we put him in training mode. No other cars on the field. Just him playing, him learning the controls, no pressure, no external stimuli or anything going on while he was still learning to play. Then we put in 1 computer on easy mode. Beat the crap out of that guy. Then we started adding in more, upping the difficulty level, and he really, really enjoyed himself. So I definitely encourage you, if you're a game designer or interested in this space, to come and seek out activities like this and game nights. Come join us. I don't know if I have the authority to invite you to, but Bryce says you can come. So definitely come on, come sit with us and learn from these gamers that we get to work with.
You guys, I just want to say before I start, I'm so incredibly impressed with Kaitlyn. I'm proud of her. She was an OT student this time last year and has really kind of stepped up in the ranks of an occupational therapist, like tremendously. I think she's the first OT ever to be working directly with Microsoft, and that's a huge step for our profession. And I'm just, as a mentor of hers, looking at her bypassing me and just like skating away into the sunset, I'm just like so proud. So I'm just so thankful for you and impressed by you. All right, so I love gaming. I'm an occupational therapist and I love humans. And I'm gonna try to talk fast because I have so many things I wanna show you and I just can't go fast enough. So when I look at gaming in general, I have 2 big approaches. And the first one is I just want to discover ways to be able to make gaming accessible for everyone, which is what we're all here for. And the second one, more importantly, and why I'm talking to you today, is that I want to discover new ways to use gaming therapeutically. And that could be from anything from, a tiny Game Boy to, your most interactive, game on an Xbox or something. So I look at all those potentials, and I do this very specifically because I've got some control issues. Now, this is my gaming setup at home, and there's actually 23 systems plugged into that TV. And then they're ready to go. They're not. I have like a bunch of switchers, so don't worry about it. But I'm so interested in how games work with people from day one to till they're like great gamers. And so and all different types of accessibilities. The picture on your left there, just kidding, you're right, is controllers, because everything that I do ends up coming back to how do you actually engage in that game. So I also collect controllers, because with all these systems you have to have ways to play them. So I'm always interested in using like Rock Band, foot pedal with the Zac, or using the bongo drums for Donkey Kong Country, to play my N64 or GameCube or whatever. I think it's GameCube, yeah. So I'm always looking at things. My most interesting peripheral controller that I found was this guy here, the sewing machine for the Game Boy Color. I thought that was always really interesting that they decided to incorporate some kind of outside of the box things. And as occupational therapists, we're always looking for how can we engage people in their day-to-day life activities. And if I have somebody that's interested in sewing and they have some kind of disability or injury, I think this is kind of a cool medium to say, hey, you know what? We can start off very simple. We're going to throw a program into your sewing machine, and then we're going to sew with it. And maybe it's Mario or Yoshi or something like that, but still pretty dope. This is in the Video Game Museum out in Austin, or up in Dallas, which is something you should definitely go to. Occupational therapists have a very unique perspective on therapy itself. We differ from physical therapists because as physical therapy looks at that physical rehab, the walking, the strengthening, the range of motion, we look at how it actually applies to your day-to-day life. It gives you the ability to engage in the things that make you an independent individual human. And that's why we're so different. We have this kind of mental health mentality that looks at people as they are kind of internally unique. So let's talk about gaming in general. So I began using gaming as a treatment tool about 15 years ago. But the doors really blew off, their hinges when the Wii came out in 2006. The Wii kind of rewrote the book on using gaming in therapy. It was active, it was stimulating, it required specific movement patterns that were indicated in a lot of upper extremity treatment plans. And I loved it because it was all kind of task and goal specific. Therapists are always looking for opportunities to engage their patients in day-to-day activities. So if I have a game that can do that all in one place, I win, right? So with the Wii, I could cook, I could bowl, I could conduct science experiments, I could hunt, I could fish, on and on and on. The term rehabilitation became a pretty commonplace term in many clinics. So kind of fast forward a little bit. In 2010, I was deployed to Afghanistan. I was there for about 14 months. And I started doing a little bit different type of therapy. We've spent the greater part of today talking about physical disabilities, low vision, blindness, the upper extremity issues, subtitles, all that stuff. But at where I was working at Afghanistan, we were doing a lot of work with concussion type injuries. And they would not come from your typical ones like you would see here in the US, like sports related injuries or car accidents. They would come from these blast waves. So I'm going to show you a clip, and this is war. There's no blood or anything, but I want to show you an actual concussion happening in real time, only so you can kind of appreciate what one of these injuries would look like. Now you'll notice like nothing touched him, nothing hit him, but there's this concussive wave that like passes through this body that all of a sudden like kind of destroys you almost. Matter of fact, they were looking at kind of making this its own specific brain injury that's labeled something a little bit different. And I'm going to let you kind of finish out this real quick. And you can see the guy's messed up. I mean, he's really messed up, and it's crazy. But he ends up coming to me in my treatment area. Of course, he's got issues now. If you have a concussion or a mild traumatic brain injury, a lot of times you'll see things like problem-solving issues, concentration problems. You'll have things that you can't really engage like you once did. You'll have like lack of focus. And so these are all problems that you can rehab. But if you have multiple concussions on top of each other, they can become what's called post-concussion syndrome, which is a lifelong issue that will give you these issues, almost to the end of time. So you have to get real strategic on developing your day-to-day routine. So there in Afghanistan, I had a very small space, so it's not like I had this huge, robust gym that I could just run out and do things with. So I had, this treatment area that I started to do, and I said, hey, games can give me a lot in a small space. And so I started working with the Wii, this stupid game, Big Brain Academy. Has anybody played this in here? Yeah, okay, so this actually is a really kind of cool game that, again, not intended for like a rehab type situation, but it was perfect for what I was working with. So let's kind of look at it and we'll kind of see what it does. All right, so the next game we're going to do is Big Brain Academy. You can kind of see it over there. Essentially, this is the one that's going to be more for problem solving. If they're having like memory and coordination issues, this is the one that I typically kind of like have them do. So go ahead and push start, and we'll kind of see it. You can see it's going to do like a different computation, visualization, different exercises like that. So I'll take you through a few of these just so you can kind of get the idea of what we're looking at. Now, he's going to have to kind of figure out, like for this one example, which arrow comes next, like to complete the track. So he's going to click on one of the arrows, and then to get out of the field, and he went in there. So basically he's trying to put on the page where the people go. Now, initially what I'm asking the people to do is just get the answer right. Don't worry about the time so much. And so what they're trying to do is just find, what the appropriate answer is for each of them. And he's not doing the grades right now, but you can kind of get an idea of kind of what we're looking at when we do this particular one. And again, this is visualized. All right, so I'm going to move on, but you get the idea. So and you would think like those are these super easy tasks. But as you're working through one of these concussions, it's not as easy as you would think. So moving on, so it's interesting because every treatment clinic across the world got these Wiis, and they're using Wii Sports and all these things, which were all awesome. But we're now in 2019, and they're still in all these clinics, and they're still using these stupid games, And so I talk to therapists all the time, and I say, hey, we are literally 13 years removed from the Wii. What are you doing? The Switch is such a powerful piece of equipment that could actually replace what you're doing. And somebody actually called me out on this, and I thought it was pretty interesting, which makes me again love that systems across the kind of span of our lifetime are purposeful. So this is the Wii Fit Plus. And you guys remember the balance board. So the significant thing about this is it's called proprioceptive feedback, meaning if you lean to the left, it'll lean to the left. If you lean to the right, it'll lean to the right, right? And so when the Wii U came out, the Switch came out, they don't have this Wii balance board anymore. So leaning to left and right, you don't have that kind of weight shift feel that the original Wii had. And here's kind of a good example as we're doing some skiing. Trying to complete the game side to side.
Actually slalom skiing, and you're going to see by adjusting his balance, he's going to try to get through the different slalom gates to make it downhill. Now, I want you to note the actual top right corner. If he leans a little bit forward and gets in that blue space, it's really an optimized balance area. So if he's in the blue and he's leaning to the appropriate right and left areas, he's going to go fast and he's also going to get through the wickets like he needs to.
All right, so essentially what I'm looking at there is if he has issues with vertigo or balance, like this is a great kind of medium to be able to work on that. And again, it's fun. Kaitlyn talked about engaging something in someone in something that's fun and interesting to them. So let's move on to the one of my programs that included the Xbox 360. And I apologize for some of these older ones, but I kind of have to because they worked. So the Kinect was so interesting to me, and one of the games I loved to play was a game called DJ Hero. Who played DJ Hero, right? So the big point of this game is the fact that I can do what we call in the therapy world, I can grade the activity. And grading the activity is what we've been talking about all day. It's making a game a little bit easier so I can find success, and as I get better, I can grade it a little bit higher to make it more challenging and thus get therapeutic results from it, right? So I'm going to show you us playing DJ Hero on a very simple level. Again, if you're not familiar with the game, it's got a turntable, and if you get better on it, it's going to give you more things to do. So the neat thing here too is as you're working with a brain injury, you're looking at, this is a visually stimulating game. You've got audible feedback, you've got both hands working, and of course you're kind of feeling the music. You want the game to play well, and so we're going to take a look at this real quick.
All right, so here we go.
I'll probably say this all again right now.
Jay-Z and Tupac mix, and so you'll see what he's basically going to have to do. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit so we can hear. So what he's going to have to do is he's going to have to, again, coordinate his fingers with what's going on the screen. There's elements where he's going to have to scratch, and we'll show that, kind of what he does. Now this is, again, on easy, and it gets very difficult where he's having to use both the left and right hands. All right, you can see this is kind of what the screen looks like.
To note also, the cool thing about that controller was that you could make it left-handed or right-handed, depending on which one you were. So, all right, we're going to move on. All right, so on top of just your regular console gaming, I do a lot of different work in places that any kind of engagement in gaming could work. So this is the Kaitlyn. It's the computer-assisted rehab environment, and essentially it gives me a huge virtual space, safe space that I can put like my amputees or people that are working on walking or engagement in their environment. So the Kaitlyn, patients would tell me all the time, I was like, what's your goal? And they say, oh, I just want to walk. Well, personally, I don't care a whole lot about walking. Like, what are you going to do when you get there? So many people just want to walk, and I didn't care about that. Why does that matter to you? And so I'll talk you through some of this stuff. This is the actual footage of the Kaitlyn being done. So I have sensors that are put on both hands so they can kind of detect on where you're going. So I'm working on one, walking in balance, but two, I'm keeping him distracted so that it almost comes second nature to him. It gives him this, kind of feel that is, hey, you know what, while I walk, I don't just walk, I walk and I talk with my hands, or I walk and, high five somebody or something like that. There's a lot of different things that we do. Like if you're in a supermarket, you're going up and grabbing different things. And so this next one is perfect. This is what we call functional mobility. So walking's not a whole lot of things, but think about making a sandwich in your kitchen. You got to go over there and kind of sidestep to grab your mayonnaise. You got to come over here, grab a plate out of the cabinet. So this is functional mobility. It's side to side, back and forth, using your arms, using your legs. And again, now this right here, our engineer hasn't built me a kitchen yet, but I could kind of simulate some of these things using something that's rich, that's interesting to them. So just another kind of example of something that we could use. VR, I like VR. I think it's got a lot of potential. This is something kind of cool that UPS did, and it's basically doing a VR game as like you were one of their truck delivery people. And you can see she's grabbing boxes and she's placing them in different areas. And as an this is just a random expo, and as an occupational, actually, this was South by Southwest. Shout out Aaron over there, represent. All right, oh, and Bryce, oh yeah, oh, that's right, just Aaron, sorry, just shout out to you. But anyway, as an occupational therapist, you look at this like, oh my gosh, if I want to get somebody working again and they're having issues with like maybe trunk control or mobility, this would be a perfect way to simulate their environment without giving them rigors of an actual heavy box or something. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to try to go fast. I think I have like 6 minutes or something. I want to mention biofeedback because I think it's really interesting, and I think it can be kind of a next level medical stuff. This is what's called the freeze framer. It's made by HeartMath, and it basically kind of takes your control of your body and how it interacts with a stimulus. And so if I can do a thing called coach relaxation and teach somebody to control themselves in a stressful environment, their performance will end up being better because they have control over their body just by, mentally telling it should be doing something. So this is me actually doing one. So I'm going to talk about breath control, about being in a place in my mind. It's already moving, and you can see that I have a lot of coherence issues happening all at the same time. The nice waves will be when I'm good. So I'm going to start breathing real good, and you'll see that I've controlled my body and the output is better. And you can see I'm like in this safe place right now. I feel good, like I'm controlling what my body is putting out. And so this is kind of a cool option for like if you are doing like Forza decides to do some kind of research on driving and stress. You could say, okay, bring it all back in and let's kind of control yourself, control your output. And one other thing that I think is really cool is that the Mightier, have you guys heard of the Mightier? Anybody here? So Mightier actually uses your heart rate to be able to play the game if you get too stressed out. That's typically for children. And they've done studies with Boston's Children's, Harvard Medical School, to show that if the kids have better outcomes, both with behavior, but stress from their parents and everything like that, by being able to control themselves. So this game, in order to play the games, which are great games by the way, they have to be, they can only go up to a certain heart rate. If they go up higher, if they get stressed out, the game will stop and you have to bring it all back in. And it's just a cool concept. But I just wanted to show that because I thought it was worthwhile. Oh, we're not going to watch that again. Okay, so I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't talk about Warfighter Gage. Now, back in the day, like when I first started gaming or doing looking at ways to get people to be able to re-engage in gaming, I was doing kind of simple stuff like this. Like I would make splints for people who couldn't hold controllers because that's all I knew how to do. I'm not an engineer. I can't rewire a control. Zach didn't exist. And so I was doing the best I could. I had this really cool chance meeting with a guy named Ken Jones, which you've heard his name today. And Ken said, hey, I can rewire that control for you. You can just do one-handed gaming. And I was like, yeah, would you do that? And so I'm at the time the chief of the occupational therapy at the Amputee Center, so at Walter Reed. And so we have 200 amputees all wanting to do, some type of gaming. And so there was a lot of need. And so Ken just started, knocking out these different types of controls for people. You would put like switches on one side. He would kind of remap things. He would build these really cool rigs for people. And this is kind of when Microsoft kind of came into the mix. Matt Height, who's in here, reached out to him, invited him to Microsoft. And Bryce told you the story about how he kind of got involved. And I'll just skip over this because I got the 5 minutes thing. But then, of course, came the Xbox Adaptive Controller. And Warfighter started looking. And one of the things we said was like, we make a brand new controller from scratch for everybody. And it's tough. It's rigorous. It takes a lot of time. And so one of the things that during the hackathon they talked about is if we could have this brain, this hub, you would take all of that initial part out, all of that work back out, and then we could just build switches and buttons and analog sticks and things that would just be able to work around a patient or a gamer. And so the kind of initial conversation to be able to do that was so empowering to be able to be in that place to say we may actually come out with something that ended up becoming the controller itself. So we've done all kinds of cool stuff. the picture up on the top right for you guys is a triple amputee, and Bryce had a leg control on one of his guys earlier, and right here we're playing Fallout 5, and he's got his sprint control on his leg. There's a switch on his left leg, and he's got changed his guns on his right. He's got a bunch of different setups. I don't have time to really talk about it, I'll be honest. It's Tara's fault. So I wanted to give you guys, I wanted to give you some takeaways. But yeah, this was, well, the other two pictures are really important. It's at a conference called Skills for Life, and it's a bilateral upper extremity amputee conference that happens once every 4 years. And at it, there's like tons of kids and people that have figured out ways to adapt. And it was such a powerful moment. I went and demoed a bunch of switches that we had at Warfighter and kind of just, made kids play, and it was just so awesome. So some takeaway that I want to just talk about. So as you're approaching development, I only have one more slide here, just relax. Okay. What options do gamers have for controllers when playing the game, and could everyone play if they wanted to? We've talked about all that all day. 2, is there any way that I can make a game a bit more playable for people with disabilities by simplifying or combining controls, like legacy controls? If you guys aren't familiar with that, it's like the old GoldenEye where you turned and looked at the same time. That's a really cool feature. Mario 64, same kind of thing, like you look and move, right? And if my game or project includes options for co-op or multiplayer, can I include an option for local play rather than just online? And I have Ninja Turtles up there because this damn game was so exciting for me to get so I could play with my kids, because there's 4 turtles and I got 5 kids, so 4 of them are going to want to play, or me and 3 others. But then I sit down and, just kidding. I didn't say one of the children is me, but the problem is that I'm sitting there like, all right, I'm gonna be Leonardo or whatever, and then, oh, you have to be online to play the other ones. Oh, you have to, you can't do a couch co-op, which is so tough, and so I can't stress it enough. Why have a Ninja Turtles game if I can't play sitting there with my friends or my kids? We talk about mental health. We want, parents to be able to engage with their kids. And if we continue to do this like only online play, and I get it, it's good money. There's like Xbox Gold memberships, PlayStation, whatever your online one is, but it makes sense from a business perspective. But when you're looking at accessibility, when you're looking at mental health issues, I want to be able to sit down and play with somebody. Halo, go back to split screen. Okay, I'm out of here. Tara, so there you go. Bye.